I have such a bad addiction to my phone that I had to go to a rehabilitation center last year so someone could take my phone away from me and monitor me so that I wasn't on it 24/7. Like, to this day, I average around 13.8 hours of screen time a day.
Okay, so just out of curiosity, what's everyone's daily screen time average? Because my friends and I were at dinner last night and we all looked at ours and we were distraught at how many hours a day we were spending on our phone. And I'm at the point where I really want to fix it, but it's so hard because I'm so addicted to scrolling.
My brain is permanently connected to my phone. All of the things that make my brain feel good are in my phone. I'm never in my life. Even when I'm present physically somewhere, I am not present there. I am thinking about my phone.
If you keep scrolling for another 20 years, neuroscientists say that something unrecognizable will happen to your brain. We're talking structural shrinkage in the brain, chronic stress, and dopamine rewiring. All that's already been proven in MRI studies already.
Social media is making you stupid. Society today is making you stupid, and not enough people are angry about this. Social media literally reduces the gray matter in your brain. It has been scientifically proven that you're becoming dumber the more that you doom scroll, the more that you are on social media.
Throughout human history, mankind has relied on the physical. Handwritten notes passed through snail mail, diary entries, words carved in a stone, or printed into books that you could put on your shelf. On June 29th, 2007, the iPhone was released.
Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything.
Changing the course of history in some Oppenheimer-esque inventing the atomic bomb type thing where Steve Jobs doomed all of humanity to be chronically online for the foreseeable future, ushering in an age of relying not on the physical but on the digital. Because now, not only does quick communication exist in your pocket, but so does the sum of all human knowledge. So what is the point of having anything physical, of writing anything down, of staying offline, if online is where everything is? If it's where your friends are, if it's where knowledge is, if it's where entertainment is? What's the point in anything else? Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm Silver Fox, and here on this channel I talk about classic literature, films, pop culture, and whatever I feel like talking about. And today I feel like talking about the value of being analog. As you could probably guess from the title, today I'll be going over the value of being analog, of keeping physical diaries, of staying offline, but I'll also be giving tips on how to do that near the end, so stay with me, as well as talking a bit here and there about technology and being chronically online, and all of the things that encompasses being online and offline and how that affects us as individuals. But none of that really makes for a snappy, catchy title, so for now it's just the value of being analog. I'll also be going over some maybe less obvious reasons why I think it's become harder and harder to be analog in modern society. But a lot of it is probably stuff you already know, and I'm not a super genius here to tell you I know everything and I'm here to solve all of your problems. I'm just here to talk about a subject that is important to me. And imagine some of you might have clicked on this just because of the thumbnail that said how to stay off your phone, or at least that's what I think I'm going to put on the thumbnail. We'll see. But if you're here for that, don't worry. I will be giving tips at the end of how to reduce your screen time, how to stay offline, and how to try to exist more in reality, but that's at the end. For now, let's get into it. What does it mean to be an analog person? I don't think there's like one real actual definition of this. It's more just a phrase that has grown in popularity over time, and in essence it just means to lead a more physical and less digital life, to live more intentionally, lowering your screen time, handwriting things instead of typing them, having a physical media library instead of a digital media library, consciously making an effort to live in the real world and take the slow path instead of the path of instant gratification that our phones give us.
Is anyone else also finding it nearly impossible to focus on leisurely things that we should be doing to relax? Like, I used to be able to sit through a movie, no problem. Reading, I could get through a book. Like Harry Potter's, I would binge those for hours on end. Now, my brain is completely effed. I can't even get through a 30-minute episode of a TV show without checking Instagram or TikTok every 2 minutes. Reading, forget about it. I will be lucky if I get through a paragraph without feeling the need to reach in my pocket and pull out this rectangular device to see what the heck is going on elsewhere on the internet. Anyways, I need help. What should I do? I'm screwed.
So let's get into a little bit of how we become such a digitally reliant world and how that's harming us. Now, I kid a bit in the intro with the iPhone thing. Obviously, this isn't all Steve Jobs' fault, and the world turning towards technology reliance certainly didn't start with the invention of the iPhone in 2007. That's fairly recent, and we've been technology reliant for a long time. The rom-com classic You've Got Mail came out in 1999, and that was featuring two people falling in love in an online chat room. The sci-fi film Terminator, a film that feared a future overtaken by technology, came out in 1984.
That Terminator is out there. It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear, and it absolutely will not stop. Ever. Until you are dead.
Technology has been on the rise for a long time, and so has both the fear and desire to be completely reliant on it. I don't remember exactly what year it came out. I think it was around 2006 or something, but in Meet the Robinsons, the film imagines a beautiful future full of technology and innovation, and it is this fun world that the main character enjoys living in, to see all of these advancements in the future. And there are a lot of films that have a similar premise, that imagine the future as some technological utopia or a technological dystopia. Think another 1999 movie, The Matrix, which imagines a world in which we are all plugged in digitally and not really seeing the world for what it is, but living an artificial recreation of life. And it had a lot of people thinking, how much of our world is fake? And not just in the Truman Show kind of way, where it really is fake and all curated, but how often are we really choosing to live our lives online, digitally, in a way that is real, but is so temporary it almost doesn't exist? You know what I mean? We often say, get off the internet, go into the real world, and that is important. But with so much of our lives lived online, at what point does the internet become the real world? Another movie example, because I love movies, WALL-E, a movie I really loved that imagined a future in which people literally sat in front of their screens and lived in a reality that was completely controlled by the screen in front of them. The Earth was destroyed by climate change. It was uninhabitable, so now all these people lived on a spaceship, and on that spaceship they were surrounded by so much technology. There was no real life, there was no nature, there wasn't even one-on-one human interaction. There's a scene in the movie where two people actually talk to each other for the very first time, and they're like, oh, whoa, talking to another person face to face? That's weird. And people make this analogy a lot, but we were really truly kind of headed towards that world, a world where the Earth is destroyed and everyone is so completely reliant and exists through technology that real human interaction basically ceases to exist.
I have a theory that the world will be approaching a consumption binary. We already know that some people are chronically online, and some people choose to be off of social media and really don't use their phones that much except for what's necessary. But with the advancement of AI and the ability for people to ask AI to make the most pleasing, eye-catching images for viewers, content will be approaching an asymptote of capturing human attention perfectly. So what the hell do I mean binary? There will be people who disengage from social media, at the very least, very aware, set very strict limits of how they interact online, how they are giving out their attention. And on the other side of this binary, there will be humans that are like the people in WALL-E. Human life has already become more and more convenient. We have DoorDash to get our restaurant order. We have Instacart to do our grocery shopping. We have our online banking apps so we never have to go to the bank. Who the heck gets bills mailed to them anymore? So much of what we do is dependent on being online. The internet has given people so many conveniences compared to 10, 20, 50 years ago, and it's not stopping. So what conveniences are not here yet that we will have in 5, 10 plus years? Do we never have to move? Will there be machines that are exercising our bodies for us? Will we literally just be sitting in a chair scrolling a screen of funny memes and then leave most of our socializing to platforms like social media. I don't know about you, but I do not want to be numbed by convenience. I want to experience the hardship of being human. It's important that we start building out infrastructure and community that is less online dependent. I want to be grounded in the physical world, and I want to be challenged.
And I'm not going to give you the whole history of the rise of technology because that would take a while, and I'm no genius. I don't know all of it. I'm sorry if that's what you were coming here for. But until the 2000s, it was a relatively slow rise. It went from snail mail to phones to telegraphs to faxes to emails. It was a slow progression. We didn't just wake up overnight and have texting that we could send each other. We didn't have FaceTime, all of that. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't even happen over the course of just a couple of years. It took decades and decades. And then once we had email, it was like suddenly we had pagers and mobile phones and then text messaging, and suddenly communication with another person came very quickly and easily, no matter how far away they were, which is something we've spent all of human history trying to figure out how to do. And once it suddenly came to us, it was boom, 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 boom. And now, girl, don't give out on me. Did y'all hear that? I get so nervous when I'm sitting in this chair. I am the maximum weight capacity for this chair. I weigh as much as it says, don't ever go over this. So I move and it creaks and it makes me so nervous. But anyway, it has sped up. I forgot what I was saying. It has sped up exponentially. But the invention of the smartphone just catapulted us into a version of reality that we were going to have anyway. This is what mankind has been working towards for a while. We were always going to have some version of this future. But regardless, this future is here now. So what do we do about it? And why should we do anything? Well, I can give you the why.
Here's what scrolling on the phone all day can do to your brain. Number one is dopamine overload. Every swipe you do on Instagram or TikTok can give you a tiny dopamine hit, which is the brain's reward chemical. And over time, your brain can start to crave short bursts of novelty instead of long, focused effort. And if you do this too often, it's like training your brain for instant gratification. Number two is shortened attention span. Constant novelty from scrolling keeps your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that controls focus, jumping from one thing to another. And eventually, real life starts to feel too slow. And that's why reading a book or sitting through a lecture suddenly feels impossible. Number three is reduced creativity. This is because scrolling keeps your attention externally stimulated, which then shuts down your default mode network, the system that activates when you reflect or think deeply. And without mental rest, you don't have great creativity. Number four is you can become emotionally desensitized. Too much fast-paced emotional content, such as seeing something shocking and then something funny and then something sad or happy all at once, can blunt your insula and limbic responses, which then makes you less sensitive to real emotions or even empathy fatigue. Number five is increased anxiety. Your brain isn't built for nonstop novelty, and that's why the constant switching can drain your working memory and flood your stress circuits, and why you feel wired yet mentally exhausted after hours of scrolling.
Studies show that excessive screen time and excessive use of social media is linked to mental illnesses, anxiety, and depression, and general unhappiness. We found that the risk of developing a mental health disease is directly linked to the duration, frequency, and number of social media platforms being used. Unrestrained use of social media can lead to the development of many psychosocial problems, such as disturbed sleep, decreased subjective happiness, poor academic performance, in addition to anxiety and depression. A study involving Norwegian individuals ranging from 16 to 88 years of age reported a more frequent association of anxiety with addiction to social media use. Similarly, another U.S.-based study involving 563 adults aged 18 to 22 showed that the amount of time spent using social media was directly related to the incidence of dispositional anxiety, but was not related to any recently developed anxiety. Moreover, participants who spent more time daily using social media scored higher than the clinical anxiety cutoff score, indicating the development of possible underlying clinical anxiety disorders. The use of social networks has also been reported to be associated with lower self-esteem, a decreased sense of subjective well-being shortly after its use, and a decrease in the levels of satisfaction with life in the long run. This was demonstrated by Cross et al. On a sample of 82 participants in their late teens and early 20s from different ethnic backgrounds in the U.S., However, the predisposition to poor self-esteem is just one of the so many other psychosocial concerns that arise from the excessive use of social media. We already know that social media and addictive internet use creates a reliance on the internet as our source of information. And what I mean is, it can be harder for us to remember things because we just go, oh, I'll Google it. And we no longer store in our long-term memory details that we would otherwise try to hold on to, because now it's just one click away. We don't really have to remember it. And so we offload a lot of our real life information onto the digital cloud and rely on the internet to know things for us.
Our phone addiction is much worse than you think it is, and we all like to think that we have control over it, but the reality is that most of us don't. Just did a study at a university in Germany where they took 25 participants between 18 and 30 and they took away their smartphones for 3 days, and the sheer amount of brain activity that improved just after 3 days is so insane to me. They used MRIs to monitor the changes in neural pathways and activity. Literally saw similarities between how the brain coped with phone withdrawal as to how it does with like alcohol or nicotine withdrawal. Think about all the times that you open your phone and go straight to a social media app like without even realizing. I think you can check it in your screen time. Actually, you can see which app was the first opened after you opened your phone, and it's honestly scary how often it's going to be a social media app. It's not intentional for us anymore. Like, we don't just accidentally open a book, we intentionally open a book with the intention of reading it, but it's getting to the point that we open our social media app and it's like autopilot. We go straight to scrolling because we're so used to that. It's getting worse and worse with AI, so I encourage you to intentionally do a little bit of a screen dopamine detox.
And then there's, of course, the studies that show people who frequently rely on AI have lower brain activity than those who don't. And when talking about social media and internet addiction nowadays, we have to bring AI into the conversation because it is so prevalent. And while this wasn't the case just a couple of years ago, you cannot talk about social media, internet, or phone addiction without talking about the addiction to AI, ChatGPT, character AI, and all of these different forms of AI that are taking over and becoming sort of an integral part of being on the internet, unfortunately. So we already have to worry about becoming less intelligent, less critical thinkers from both our phone usage and the specific things we're doing on that phone, like using ChatGPT. But I also believe, and this is just my personal opinion, that the rise in AI is only going to make the social anxieties and paranoia and things we have, things that the internet already increases, will make it worse. Because I believe the introduction of AI chatbots that you can talk with and all these different forms of AI that will summarize a text message from another person to you and create a response for you. With all of that, social anxiety is only going to increase as people become less familiar and less comfortable with real human social interactions. So your internet addiction leads to an AI chatbot addiction that leads to social anxiety, which leads to you isolating yourself, which leads to more loneliness, which leads to you turning to AI to fill that loneliness, which again only increases your social anxieties, and it's a vicious cycle, right?
Do you mind if I ask you a personal question?
No, not at all.
And people will essentially create their own loneliness through AI and then use AI to continue to fill that void. I don't think this is a completely out there thing to assume could happen in the future. This already sort of happens with people relying more on the friendships they make online versus in-person friendships. I say this as someone who mostly has online friends, and I definitely have social anxiety. I'm not saying that having online friends is bad. Certainly not. I've met some wonderful people through it. But there is just such a gargantuan difference between texting or DMing someone versus having a face-to-face conversation. It removes you from the human aspect just a bit, and then talking to AI completely removes you from the human aspect of it. Considering this is already happening with in-person friendships turning into exclusively online friendships and people turning to AI so much, we should at least be a little cautious of the increased use of AI also increasing anxiety and loneliness and depression as a result. I believe there was a study that shows people who use AI frequently do have more loneliness than people who don't. I'll put that up on the screen, but that's definitely something we have to look out for. But beyond that, the inability to tell what is real from what is fake because of how pervasive AI is will only increase people's anxiety and paranoia about the world around them and taking in information, or people will take in false information that is being fed to them by AI, which will only increase people getting dumber because they don't know that they're taking AI as facts. And so once again, I will go back to the study that shows people who frequently use AI have lower brain activity than those who don't. That is so important. And no, this is not a part 2 to my video about AI, although that is coming. I'm not jumping down the rabbit hole just yet, but I merely want to present that in the year 2025, being online also means being bombarded by AI. You can no longer have an AI-free internet. That world does not exist anymore. So it has to come up when we talk about being online, being chronically online. But the increase in AI and the increase in anxiety and loneliness and lower brain activity from using the internet too much is definitely the reason why I think we really need to go touch grass more than we ever have before. Because those receipts in a messy conversation you're reading could be AI. That video you're watching could be AI. Heck, I could be AI and you wouldn't even know. It gets harder and harder to tell the real from the fake. But the words you handwrote in your own journal, that's real and you know it. The photos of you and your friends on vacation that you printed out and you hold in your hand, that's real and you know it. I was going to say even the books on your shelf are real and you know it, but with AI slowly creeping into the publishing industry, that won't always be true. But for the most part, it really is. The vast, vast majority of books are not AI, especially the older ones, the classics, the good old classics that were written by human beings and we know it for a fact. These books written hundreds and hundreds of years ago were not AI, and we know it. The books and the words in them don't change. They stay on your shelf, and they don't magically disappear. Which brings me to my next point. You own nothing digitally. And yes, I am here making my case of why we should be more analog before I give you tips on how to do that, if you can't tell. One of the greatest values of physical media is that unless someone breaks in and robs you, the stuff you own is yours and it can't be taken away. This is simply not the case for anything digital. Your music library on Spotify and Apple Music or whatever else, it is not yours. If you don't pay your bill that month, you don't have access to that music anymore. And even if you do pay that bill, these streaming services can take off whole artists and whole albums and you no longer have access to them. This is not true if you have a physical copy of the album that you can play on a CD player or a record player or, whatever version of physical media you have. That's still going to exist no matter what streaming services decide to do. But that also goes with literally any app or website on your phone. Even the words you write in your Notes app on your phone are not really yours because those can be wiped away. Your phone drops and it breaks and you don't have that baby backed up on iCloud, those words are gone forever. And heck, tomorrow Apple could decide they're no longer going to be supporting the model of phone that you have and make it completely defunct. And you have nothing but a brick, no way to access it, and there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, BlackBerry did this in 2022. I thought they did, but I didn't want to say without double checking. Also, ignore my hair. It's drying. I have to post this in just a few hours, so I really don't have time to wait for it to dry and style and look good, so you do not see this. But BlackBerry, after 10, 15 years of having their product out, just decided because it wasn't popular enough anymore that they were going to discontinue service, even for all the people who were dedicated to their BlackBerries and used them regularly. Well, they just kind of had to suck it up and find something else. Because BlackBerry, the company that owns BlackBerry, they weren't going to support the use of these devices anymore, so now you just had this brick that wasn't going to work. Obviously, to an extent, we have to rely on our phones, but that is why I say physical media is so important. And having photos physically printed out, having information physically written down or printed out, or some form of, if your phone became a brick tomorrow, this would still exist kind of thing. If the website you're using shuts down, if the app you're using stops working, back when that guy deleted Flappy Bird because he couldn't take it anymore, and I know that's just a fun game, it's not really significant, but this can also happen with significant things. And I'm not trying to scare you, I'm trying to say that you can have a bit of peace about it not disappearing if it exists in the physical, which is why I have my own DVD collection, and I value physical media so much, and having these things in a physical format that cannot be changed. I mean, tomorrow Criterion could just stop selling DVDs, but that doesn't change the fact that I still have mine, and they'll still exist. But if Twitter stops existing tomorrow, well, my account's gone and there's nothing I can do about that. Sorry for rambling with my wet hair. I can't believe I've gotten to a point on my YouTube videos where I show up in the middle of the night with wet hair and no makeup on so I can finish editing. Wow. Companies do this all the time with various devices, and video games company even do this with games, deciding they're not going to support the game that you bought with your own money, that you paid anywhere from like 60 to 100 bucks for, that it's just not going to be supported by their thing anymore. I've heard my sister complain about this a bit. I know there was definitely, I think it was Xbox, but I'm not sure, they got to some hot water a few years back by deciding that they just weren't gonna, I don't understand how it all works, but some games just were not going to be playable anymore because they decided that they weren't going to be playable anymore. And that game that you bought with your own real money was not yours. The gaming company just took it away. And I understand that it's a bit more difficult when it comes to games to own physical media because you do require the company to continue to support it because most games require an online aspect now. So you are sort of at the mercy of that company to just continue making your games playable. But I think if you have any possible opportunity to not be at the mercy of a company, to just rely on their goodwill, you should take it. And I don't mean to hoard. I'm not trying to encourage hoarding and just having a bunch of stuff. But saying, I really love this movie, I want to be able to watch it even if the streaming service decides to not play it anymore, because streaming services get rid of their movies and TV shows, etc. all the time. Think of how Netflix got rid of Bandersnatch, which was a movie that had video game options built into it, right? So you can make choices and decide what happens next. And that is a game, movie thing that could really only be played and used on the Netflix platform. And Netflix decided to get rid of it. And so now, sections of it are basically lost media. You can no longer play it. Even if someone bootlegs it and puts it somewhere else, it's not playable in the same way because you can't make those choices. You can't see every version of reality, every ending. And we just had to rely on Netflix to keep it on there, and they didn't. And now it's just kind of lost. But the DVD you have on your shelf cannot be lost, again, unless you physically lose it or someone steals it. The great thing about relying more on physical media than digital media is you have assurance that it will always be there in a way that you cannot for digital media. I mean, heck, if your Wi-Fi goes down for a couple hours, you can't watch a movie on streaming, but you can put in the DVD. I know people who've basically journaled their entire lives on their Twitter accounts or various social medias, and then their account would get suspended, and they would be sad that they lost this section of their life because they couldn't get their account back. Your actual physical journal can't get suspended. It exists as long as you don't throw it in the trash. I know we say that the internet is forever, but in a way, it just really isn't. The Wayback Machine is helpful, but what if the Wayback Machine goes down? We just rely on that to be there. We rely on the Internet Archive. We rely on all these things to archive stuff. But if they decide to take it down one day, we can't way back the Wayback Machine. It's gone. A digital library is more fragile than a glass egg. And now, once again, being analog is not about just collecting physical media. It is not an excuse to hoard or to give into overconsumption. It's about being more intentional. It's easy to have too much stuff and not really value it when it's all digital, when it's a digital library. But when it's real, you have to think more about, is this something I actually want to take up physical space in my life? Is this a movie I love enough to make space for it on my shelf? Is this a book I love enough to make space for it on my shelf? And so you have to be more intentional about what you purchase. But analog is about being more intentional even in non-purchasable ways. It's about taking more time away from a screen, focusing more on real life, real human connection, and taking time to water those friendships, and be more present in your own life, to have more hobbies, to, in a way, take more time for yourself than you are granting yourself when all you do is doom scroll. And the way in which we digitize everything is a huge part of a lack of intentionality. Is that a word? Is intentionality a word? I'm sorry. And now I don't want y'all to hear me say any of this and think I'm trying to present myself as some wise hermit who stays offline all the time except to post to YouTube. That I'm out there in the real world living the life Henry David Thoreau cataloged in his book Walden. I am chronically online in ways that people have never been chronically online before.
Sometimes I forget that most people don't actually spend that much time on their phone. Like, you know that game you play with your friends where you all check your screen time and you compare it to each other and you see which apps you use the most? Yeah, that one. So I have done that with quite a few people, and almost every single time there is somebody in the group that's like, guys, I'm so bad. It's been a really bad week for me. Okay, I don't want to preface that, okay? And then I'm like, it's okay, like, it's fine. We're just having fun right now. What's your screen time? And then they're like, it was 4 hours the other day. Okay, but I was home all day and I was feeling sick. That's why it's so high, okay? And like at that point, I can't even like, I don't even have any room for anything. I don't even have any room to like make a self-deprecating joke because I'm over here with screen time of like 10 hours. 9 hours on a good day. I read out my number and everyone's like, oh my god, like, are you okay? And I'm like, okay guys, but it used to be worse. Trust me, it used to be worse, okay? Like, it used to be like 11 hours. And that does not make me look better. That just makes me look worse, if anything. Because now I'm just the guy who's proud that he got his screen time down from 11 hours down to 9 hours and thinks that that's an accomplishment or something.
I'm so online, it's not even funny. My screen time is embarrassing and painful. And so the things I'm saying in this video are as much for me as it is for everyone else. I need a reminder that I need to take some time off my screen. I need to have a list of ways in which to do it and to be more intentional about my life, because I would also greatly benefit from that. I want to try to implement these things in my own life to avoid my brain turning into a big pile of mush. And so I'm not here putting myself on a pedestal saying, I figured it out. I live the analog life. And you need to follow in my footsteps. That's not true for this video. It's also not true for a lot of my videos. When I made the video about overconsumption, I wasn't saying, oh, I've never overconsumed a day in my life. I definitely don't have a bunch of books. I definitely don't have a bunch of physical things and knickknacks. I've definitely never bought clothes that I don't need. A lot of these videos I make because I need to hear them, right? So we're all in this together. We're all in this together. Back it up. Back it up. Let's reel it in. But speaking of Walden by Henry David Thoreau, that brings me to my next point. That being offline, being inaccessible, being analog is largely a privilege of the wealthy.
I genuinely believe that Gen Z is aware of and wants to fix our generational issue with phone addiction. But I also think the conversations we have with boomers about this issue every single day is holding us back from making progress in a way that's very sociologically predictable. Because we've all heard that, oh, you're depressed, you know, it's gotta be that phone. Diabetes, the same. You have cancer, you know, if you didn't spend so much time on InstaChat, like it's an old tired argument and we all know that, but it's also completely in line with what ideological conservatives say about almost every systemic issue. That is, instead of recognizing the problem as a system that's taking advantage of people, they talk about it in an individual manner. You are choosing to be addicted to your phone, you're choosing to make decisions that are impacting your life in a negative way, as opposed to the entire technology industry is targeting the minds of our children. And I think that we can begin to take back the conversation from boomers who are often in control of it if we remind them of the hypocrisy of placing individual blame on someone for a systemic issue. Then we can start to solve it.
And this is the section where I'm going to talk about why I think for us, the average people, it has become so hard to stay offline and to live a more intentional life than we're living now. But now hear me out. This video isn't going to end with me saying, you'll always be on your phone because you're poor and there's no way out. Because I will be going over things at the end that I think we, as regular people, can do in our everyday lives to try to lower our screen time, be more analog, and be more intentional. But it would be ridiculous for me to put this forth without acknowledging a huge reason why this is a problem for us. To not acknowledge the hardships that we face in trying to do this would be silly. So if you'll indulge me for a few minutes in talking about why I think that this life is so much more attainable for the wealthy and, to a degree, really impossible for the average person. Bear with me. In Walden, Thoreau talks about living his life in a cabin off the grid, reconnecting with nature and with himself and what he's learned during that time. It's often hailed as a very introspective and philosophical book and is looked at as something of an aspiration, that we should aspire to live the life that Thoreau had in Walden, in which he lived secluded in the woods, living for himself and nature in his garden, I think. I'm pretty sure he had a garden. But the book is even quoted in one of my favorite films of all time, Dead Poet Society. They read a line from his book at the beginning of every meeting of the Dead Poet Society, and I don't even have to look at my Kindle to know what it says, because I love this movie and I love this quote and I have it memorized. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to suck all the marrow out of life, and not, when I come to die, discover that I had not lived. It's a very beautiful quote, and I really appreciate the sentiment of it. And as a person who essentially lives in the woods, spends a lot of my time around here, and thinks that nature is so beautiful and calming, I really do appreciate the sentiment of it, and honestly, I understand just wanting to walk into the woods and live there. But there is some context missing. First of all, Thoreau's cabin was not nearly as secluded as he may have led people to believe. There were a lot of people around him. He even lived near town. He lived near his mother, and he would frequently visit her and have her do his laundry. He was not living a self-sustained, independent life. He was not living the idyllic fantasy that we all imagine. And unlike Thoreau, for the average person, a years-long vacation in seclusion, or near seclusion, is completely not feasible. You'd starve to death very quickly from not being able to stock your beautiful, secluded cabin with things like groceries. It would be nice and quiet out there, but you'd be quiet too, because you're dead, because you can't afford to live. Even out there in the middle of nowhere, you still require money to be alive. I mention this because a lot of people's fantasy or solution to this problem of being addicted to their phone, or really anything in their life, is to go live off the grid, live in seclusion, go live in a cottage in the middle of the woods, be self-sustained, never connect to the internet again. But that is not a realistic way to deal with any of this. And I'm sure everyone knows that, but I just thought I would go a little in-depth into that and talk about our real circumstances and real solutions, not fantasy solutions. It's simply not in the realm of possibility for 99.9% of the human race to live the life that Thoreau lived. To even dream of it can make you sad sometimes, because it's not feasible. It's not attainable. I'm not trying to get you down. I'm just trying to say, a lot of people look to that book as their inspiration to maybe be offline or to live off the grid. But first of all, he didn't have the internet back then tempting him, but he didn't truly live off the grid, and he wasn't even self-sustained. He was able to afford this lifestyle because his family helped pay for him to not work for this period of time. And in the 2025 capitalist hellscape, where even being alive and breathing seems to cost money now, we cannot afford to sustain ourselves in that way. Your parents are not going to be able to pay for you to live off the grid the way they could for Thoreau, unless you're in the 1%, which again is just the 1%. The 99% are out here just dreaming of being able to taking a sick day. And while Thoreau wasn't exactly wealthy on his own, he did need help. When you take that into consideration, reading his work can be very frustrating because he is advertising a life that is unattainable, right? And I'm not saying he's evil for doing that. It was attainable for him in his life, and it's something he did that made him happy. I'm not trying to cancel Thoreau for living in the woods.
What? Gen Z's trying to what?
I'm only trying to say that the average person in 2025 is not allowed to be accessible in that way. In fact, bringing it back to 2025, even celebrities are often very much offline, right? If you find a celebrity who happens to be chronically online, it's like you hit the jackpot.
What's your screen time?
What's my screen? Who are you, the police? Oh my God. Didn't tell me this would be an indictment. Whew, I'm sweating. Ugh, this feels incriminating. 10 hours?
And that's a day.
Yeah, but I'm down 21% from last week.
But I would say the vast majority of celebrities don't even have any kind of an online presence. And if they do, it's probably curated by an entire social media team. And these stars don't even have to go near the internet to be on it.
I remember reading a Substack article talking about how kids from richer families actually, even though they have a Kids from richer families have more access to screens, so phones, laptops, tablets, etc., but they're actually on screens for fewer hours a day compared to kids with poor socioeconomic backgrounds who might only have one screen, which is their phone. Basically what it's saying is that the poorer you are, the more likely you are to doom scroll, and the richer you are, the less likely you are to doom scroll.
For us, the average people, a lot of people need to be online to promote their business. Influencers have to be on it all the time to post videos and, to promote their affiliate links and whatever it is they're doing. But there were quite a few times when I really just wanted to delete all of my social media and not exist on the internet and go be a real person again. But then I'm like, I need the internet because I have books and I'm an author and I can't promote my books if I don't have an audience to promote it to. And so there were many a times when I just wanted to quit the internet, and then I remembered I kind of can't do that. And now that I'm a YouTuber, I definitely can't do that. I need to be up to date on the current trends and things to talk about, and I need to engage with my audience. And let me tell you, I am not capable of getting on here and reading my comments and then closing my phone and not looking at it again. I will go to Twitter and Instagram and whatever else. The temptation is right there. And the thing is, for a lot of us, the temptation is right there. And the way to get rid of the temptation is to get rid of the phone, and we can't. We live in a world where we require having phones. A lot of our jobs require us to be on call, right? Having our phone on us 24/7, always being available to some extent. A lot of people are trading their smartphones out for dumb phones, and that's an interesting way to sort of combat, having too much screen time. But that can only do so much, because there are some things you do have to do on your smartphone. And how long is your dumb phone going to last before you go, this isn't worth it? I think of Christopher Nolan, who I love and adore, and this part isn't scripted because I can talk about Christopher Nolan unscripted all day. He is very famous for being one of the most analog celebrities out there, right? If you know anything about him, you know this, and if you don't, let me tell you. He very famously does not have a phone. If you want to get in contact with him, you have to call his wife, and he writes all his scripts on a computer that is not connected to the internet. Not connected to the internet. He is one of the most offline people out there. And I think he even said in an interview the reason he doesn't have a phone is because he knows he would get addicted to it. Because that's something anybody can get addicted to. It's not like a uniquely Gen Z problem. But I would often look at just how offline he is and kind of aspire to be like him. But then I remember, you just can't be. Imagine going in to apply for a job and saying, yeah, I don't have a phone and my computer's not connected to the internet, so you can't get in contact with me in any way, anytime I'm not here at work. You're not getting that job. If your job consistently has trouble reaching out to you and connecting to you, you could get fired. Having a smartphone and even a laptop is pretty much required for being alive and having a job and going to school and all of this stuff. It's all required, right? Your boss needs to be able to text you and say, oh, your coworker called in sick. Can you fill in for them? If you're on call, you need to be able to get a call and say, we need you here right now. And you need to have a computer for your work, for schoolwork, to do a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm struggling right now with the fact that I don't have a computer. I just have my phone. There's quite a few things that I'm like, I can't edit my videos the way I want to because I don't have access to the software I want to. I'm pretty much stuck with CapCut, which isn't ideal. Celebrities can get their assistants to answer their phones and their emails. They can even get their assistants to make their social media posts for them. They really don't have to be online unless they absolutely want to. It's so much easier for them to disconnect. The average person does not have these avenues. And let's be real, a big reason why people are on their phones so much is because they come home after a long day of work and they are exhausted. And they do not have the physical or mental energy to give to their hobbies and their passions and things they would otherwise really want to do. They really only have the energy to sit on their phone and doom scroll for a little while. And even if you did have the energy to go out and hang out with your friends and see them one-on-one, your friends might not, or they might be working. And you can't even go take a fun vacation and get away from it all because you can't get off work. You don't have the paid days off. You can't afford it. And your friends that you want to go with certainly can't afford it. This isn't the same for celebrities who really have much more flexible schedules and can just go whenever they want. Their friends can go whenever they want, and they're not burnt out like the rest of us. I don't know about you, but when I'm hanging out with friends one-on-one, I never even really think about looking at my phone. But how often do we have the opportunity to hang out with people? Everyone's working. Everyone's exhausted from working. Doom scrolling is often the only reprieve people have from their very difficult days. It takes a massive amount of effort to not doom scroll, to not be online. You have to go against the grain of society in order to do that. You have to take extra effort in your own life that 50 years ago people did not have to take, because when they would come home, they didn't have a phone to scroll through. They had to find other hobbies. You could also work a lot less often. The vast majority of things that could get you away from that darn screen are simply not easily accessible to you. You can't have an assistant take your calls while you go on a trip around the world and try a bunch of new hobbies until one sticks. It's not practical. Even if you did have the time, hobbies are expensive and life is expensive. A lot of people can't devote money to hobbies. I talked earlier about how being analog can be about focusing on friendships in real life, but that can be so hard to do when you literally don't have the time, energy, or means to do it. So when I talk about all of this, I'm not here to say, you're doing it wrong. The reason you doom scroll is entirely on you, and your life sucks because you. It's not the system we live under at all. Because that's not true. It's just not. And that whole little section was not scripted, so I ranted about that much longer than I meant to. But I just feel like it's important to mention. A lot of times, we really don't take into account that we simply do not have the time, energy, or money to do any of the things that would keep us off our phone and keep us grounded in the real world. So don't beat yourself up too much. I'm not saying to just accept fate and doom scroll forever, but it's important to realize you are at a disadvantage and you just need to work with what you've got. So what have you got? What are the ways in which we can try to stay off our phone more and be in our real lives more? We already know that excessive internet use is bad for us. We know that it's killing our brains, it's killing our happiness. But that alone isn't enough for us to stay away from our phones, because there are so many things preventing us. We need to make small steps. We need to make small changes in our life, because you just can't go cold turkey on the internet. It's not going to work. So what are some things that we can do? I've talked a lot about the hurdles, now let's talk about the solutions. Some of these are kind of obvious, some of these are maybe not, and hopefully it will be helpful. But the first, this is a super obvious answer, journaling. Physical journaling, first of all, that can't be taken away from you the way a digital journal is. But when you are writing something out by hand, you think more about what you're saying than when you're just typing it out. It requires more critical thought. And I can tell you how many times I would think over something, I would text my friend about it, but the second I started trying to write it down in my journal, it made something click for me. It's also a really good way, to just catalog your life and look back at things. And even if you never look back at your old journal entries, although I do think there's a lot of value in that, it's really beneficial for current present day you to be able to get all of that out on the page, to write it, the intentionality behind handwriting it versus typing it out. Another thing, going alongside that, reading more. And if you can, take an effort to read physical books instead of a digital book. If digital books are all you have, that's fine, but just read more, work that brain of yours. And similar to journaling, writing handwritten letters to your friends and loved ones. I'm sure there are people in your life who would love to participate in handwriting letters with you. It's something a lot of us say we want to do and we never actually do. So handwrite letters to your friends. And to go along with this, try to text less and be in person more. There's only so much we can do about hanging out with people in person when we're all so busy, and a lot of our friends exist on the internet far away and we can't meet up with them. Take extra time to enrich those friendships. Make a greater effort than you already are, if you can, to see those people in person more often and have those one-on-one conversations. There is such a drastic difference between talking to someone in person and seeing them face to face and being able to chit-chat with them and hug them and all of this stuff versus texting. And so with that, if you know you're seeing a friend soon, like in the next week or something, if you think this will go over well, maybe message a friend, let them know that you're not really going to be texting and you want to wait until you see them in person. Make sure you let them know that it's not anything serious, but that you're just trying to reduce your screen time and be more intentional. And so you want to save the conversations for in person. Or you can choose to FaceTime them instead of texting, which is still more digital, but it has so much more of a human touch to it than just texting. So these are ways in which you can actively go about engaging more with your friends and being more intentional in your friendships. Handwritten letters, FaceTiming, seeing them in person as much as possible. Another thing I would recommend, printing out your photos, having real physical copies of them, even taking pictures on a film camera instead of on a digital camera or on your phone. Try to make these memories as physical as possible and hold on to these things. It can also make you realize which photos in your camera roll are important to you. Do you look at this photo and think, I don't like this enough to print it out? Why is it in your camera roll then? Get rid of it. That can help you with your digital library, but, having physical pictures to put in photo albums and scrapbooks These are really nice. And along with scrapbooking, junk journaling exists, right? Which is where you take receipts, various pieces of ephemera, things throughout your life, and you just sort of collage them together to create memories. This is good if you have too many physical things. If you are more leaning towards the hoarding side of life, cutting up little pieces and gluing them to a page to keep that memory without keeping that big physical thing is a good way to condense those memories while also holding on to them. But this is good also if you are not one to keep physical memories and you want to hold on to things that are good in your life. Start scrapbooking, junk journaling, doing all of that. Great way to remember pieces of your life that would otherwise fade in your memory. And it's just fun and kind of cathartic to do it.
You don't have a willpower problem. You have a slot machine in your pocket and you never stood a chance. Here's why and how to fix it. It all starts with something called variable reward. It means you don't know when or if you'll get the reward, but you keep doing the thing anyways because of the uncertainty. That is why you check your phone hoping for a notification. We actually like to stick around longer when rewards are unpredictable. Then we've got dopamine loops. It is the cycle of wanting, searching for, and receiving said award, and then repeating again and again and again. Brain scans show that dopamine spikes not just when you receive the reward, but when you think you're going to receive the reward. And that is the anticipation that keeps you going. But this isn't new. Have you ever been to Vegas? Casinos run on this exact same science. Slot machines, they're designed around variable reward. Sometimes you win, most of the time you don't, but your brain keeps chasing the next hit. Gambling is so addictive that people go into rehab programs just to break the cycle. And now we've got a mini casino in our pocket, accessible 24/7. Your willpower was never going to win against that. It is a billion-dollar design working exactly as intended. Trying to resist this with willpower and discipline is like swimming against a current with the power to pull you under. If you are not actively resisting, you will get swept away. So, what do? You set boundaries stronger than your willpower. Number 1, block your apps during vulnerable times. Step number 2, make space. Set spatial boundaries. Put your phone in another room when you're working or sleeping or when you're with people. And number 3, replace the act. Replace doom scrolling with something else that you enjoy. For example, when I am on the metro now, I am not on my phone. I have a designated metro book, and the only way that I'm allowed to read that book is if I'm on the metro. Take crochet needles with you everywhere. Take a journal with you everywhere. Whatever you need to do when your discipline and willpower fails you, because it will fail. You're here right now, aren't you? It's okay. You're human. The point is to design your environment so that you don't end up here on accident.
This one is so obvious and it's something everyone says, but putting screen time limits on your phone, limiting the total amount of screen time you can do on your phone, or limiting certain apps that you use excessively can be a really good way to reduce your screen time and put those parameters in place. Also, something I've started implementing recently is this app called Focus Friend, which was apparently invented by Hank Green, which is cool. But you have this little bean who knits, and they can only knit when you're not looking at your phone. And so in order for them to be productive, you have to be off your phone and be productive. And then you can trade the things they knitted for items to decorate their room. So the less time you spend on your screen, the more you can enrich the life of this little character that you're taking care of. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people have turned to using a dumb phone, getting a classic plain Jane phone that can really only make phone calls. I don't know how useful it is. I haven't tried it, but if you're really desperate, it's worth a shot if you want to do that. Another thing you can do with your phone to make it less appealing is to turn on grayscale. So basically put your entire phone in black and white so there's less color, there's less stimulation. This is not going to work if you're colorblind, but if you're not colorblind, turn your phone on grayscale to make it less visually enticing for you. Set daily goals for yourself in terms of screen time and productivity. Write them down. A physical list of things you want to do that you can check off throughout the day. So you are being more intentional about the things you want to do throughout the day and include a certain amount of screen time or being on certain apps in that. So you are making a conscious effort to do a certain amount of things each day. And that's a great way to be more intentional in your daily life.
Hey, I'm going to talk about how I reduce my screen time. First thing that I did is I set my intention of why I wanted to do that, why I wanted to change, why I decided that it was enough was enough. I felt super detached from the real life world I also felt like I didn't have any hobbies or goals or aspirations because I would only go on my phone. That was the first step, is setting my intentions. My intentions were reduce my screen time, reduce my just random scrolling, and to create more hobbies for myself because I didn't have any hobbies because all I did was go on my phone. Next thing that I did was clear out my screen. So I have an iPhone. So now you can like remove apps from your home screen but still keep the apps. So I removed Snapchat, I removed Instagram, I removed all of my like shopping apps, so like Amazon, Target, stuff like that. Like I just got rid of. Oh, the next thing that I did kind of ties into that is that I only allowed myself to go on my phone when I have a purpose. Before I go on my phone, like this will take like 3 seconds. I'll like figure out what I'm doing before I go on my phone. So if it's like to go on Spotify to change the song or like change the playlist or go onto Snapchat to like text my friend back. I set those intentions very clearly before I go on my phone. And I feel like that helps significantly. Another thing that I did is I got rid of all my notifications. Okay, stick with me here. I keep all my notifications for like phone calls and text messages and all of my like work apps that I need. I'm excited. It makes me excited about life to decide what I'm doing and where I'm going and where I'm spending my time and where I'm not. And I love it. It's really exciting.
A big problem is short form content and the reducing our attention span. So try your best to engage more with long form content. If you're here on this video, good job, you're already engaging in long form content. If you're going to be on your phone, try clicking on some longer videos on YouTube instead of going on TikTok or Instagram Reels and scrolling through those little nuggets of instant gratification. Sit down for a longer video. Sit and watch the longer movies. Try to wean yourself off of the internet by engaging more and more with long form and not short form content. And again, I completely understand how hypocritical it is of me to talk about reducing short form content and playing TikToks in this video. But honestly, I also suffer from brain rot being chronically online, and these are videos that I found that had helpful information that I could implement in my own life, and so I thought I would share it here in its original form instead of just copy and pasting the information. And also, I know that given the topic of this video and generally how attention spans are dwindling, if I didn't add some TikToks here and there, I was worried some people might not make it to the end of the video. And there's no shame in that. I mean, we all have reducing attention spans. I do too. That's why I made this video. I'm not judging. But yeah, that's why those are in here. For me and for you. And if you have the strength to do it, delete the apps off your phone that are tempting you so much. Find a hobby you like that you can do without looking at your phone at all. And if at any point in your hobby you want to know more about it, of course you can go online and look things up about it. But I would say, if it's at all possible, try going to your local library and getting physical books on the subject and learning more through that. That is another way to stay offline and be more intentional and also support local libraries, which is always a good thing. But just remember to take things slow. Take walks when you can. Just enjoy the moment. Enjoy the silence. One of the things that drives people to the internet the most is struggling with the quiet and the slowness. And learning how to live in that and find peace in that will really help you out a lot. And understand that you are not failing or being unproductive. Sitting, taking a moment to breathe, taking a moment to take in the world around you, going for a walk, enjoying your life, reducing your stress, these are not unproductive things. These are very valuable things that you should be doing. Improving the quality of your life is never unproductive. It just isn't.
There's 10 things you can do today to help unrot your brain. The first thing is you can start implementing a word of the day. You can start today, use it 3 times in 3 different contexts, either in your head or out loud. I love the vocabulary app. I talk about it all the time, and I actually have it as a widget on my home screen. Every day I get like a handful of new words. I can just use it right then and there in my head in a sentence or out loud to somebody. 2, read. I know some of y'all haven't read a book since middle school. That's okay. I try to read a nonfiction article every morning, even if it's only like a 2-minute, 5-minute read. I really like Quantum Magazine, National Geographic, and neurosciencenews.com. Psychology Today, Science Direct, nature.com. I really like science stuff, but if you like history, math, whatever you're into, just look up free articles, 5-minute read for whatever topic. 3 is play brain games, crossword puzzles, New York Times. I love the Luminosity app. 4 is trivia. I like Sporkle. And also just look up like free trivia online. 5 is eat 1 meal today undisturbed. distracted. It can be really good for helping reset your dopamine's baseline. You're constantly exposing yourself to different streams of stimulation at one time. So you're eating something while you're watching TV, while you're scrolling on your phone, while you're playing music. It can reduce dopamine receptor sensitivity and lower the baseline over time, which kind of makes everything else in your life seem boring. So eating while you're checking emails, while you're scrolling, while you're watching TV will keep your brain in a mild fight or flight mode, which is the sympathetic nervous system. If you're able to eat without any stimulation, it'll switch you over to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest part of the nervous system. 6, meditate. The amount of benefits that come from meditation are astonishing. Every time I research it, it just blows my mind. Improves memory, focus, emotional regulation, mood regulation, but it also can increase the volume of gray and white matter in the brain, literally building and strengthening the brain, physically making it larger. Even if you only have 5 minutes, allowing yourself to just sit and focus on nothing but the breath and training the brain to focus on one thing at a time and not think is incredibly difficult. You will be more focused, more alert, less anxious, and much more able to navigate your day, your emotions, critical thinking skills, your problem solving skills, your creative thinking. 7 is listen to an intellectually stimulating podcast. I love Huberman Lab, Diary of a CEO, How I Built This, Science Versus. 8 is counter arguments. One of my favorite things to do to improve my critical thinking skills is pick a side in a debate, argue it well, and then force yourself to argue the counter. 9 is start learning a new language. I know that might sound daunting, but even listening to like immersive Spanish on Spotify in the car, or immersive French, or watching a children's movie in another language. The goal is not fluency, it's just to expose your brain to a different language to increase neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to rewire itself, create new neural pathways, new neural connections. It's incredibly important. Even just spending like 3 minutes a day on Duolingo or one of those language learning apps can be really good for your brain. Last thing is challenge yourself to get rid of any brain crutches. Don't automatically go to Apple Maps on your phone or ChatGPT. The greatest computer you will ever have access to is your brain. You don't always need to go on autopilot and have something else be your brain for you. Happy brain unrotting.
Although it is important to unwind, also having hobbies that relax you. There are some out there that can be free or really inexpensive. I know a lot of hobbies are so costly, but there are plenty of out there that don't require a lot of money. And try some new hobbies, try some fun things. If the only thing you're doing when you're not on your phone is staring blankly at a wall, waiting until it's time to pick up your phone again, that's not really helpful. That's not enriching your life. And that's not the same as, sitting in quiet serenity, not being on your phone, just itching and waiting for when you can pick it up again, for when you can be back on the internet without guilt. That's not really helpful. And I'm not trying to say you should feel guilty about being on your phone, because you shouldn't. It's a part of our daily life. It's never something we're going to be totally free from. And as I mentioned earlier, we really are put at a disadvantage as average people. Having phones, having internet, being accessible at all times is pretty much a necessity in this world. So don't bog yourself down with shame and guilt about your screen time. It is often shame and guilt about things that perpetuates us in this cycle. It's really hard to let go of things that you feel shame about, and that can be kind of hard to understand, but it's harder to address an issue if you feel so much shame and guilt about it that you just don't even want to think about it. You're so ashamed that you're doom scrolling that to avoid thinking about how bad you feel about doom scrolling, you just keep doom scrolling and turning your brain off. That's not helpful. You don't need to feel shame about the fact that you exist on the internet like everyone else does. But there are little steps we can take in our own everyday lives to be more analog, to be more in person, to nourish in-human friendships. Nourish in-person friendships, to look at our screen less, to be more productive in less typical ways. And I hope at the end of the day, we are all able at some point to put our phones down and do things that make us happy. But I hope I got my point across and this wasn't a big waste of time. I hope I explained what it means to be analog and the value of it, and hopefully, this wasn't a super deep dive, we dipped into the shallow end a bit, but hopefully it was still interesting and informative, and I hope I gave you guys some helpful tips. I had more, but I forgot them, so I hope this was good. Thank you guys for watching. Go touch grass, and I'll see you next time. Bye!
You took a picture last year. I don't know where it is. Come look for it. Have you thought about the weather? It's raining. Do you want to share a reel? Do you want to post? New DM. You got a DM 4 months ago, by the way. Uber Eats. I'm Uber Eats, and I'm curious. You don't have any more storage. Just kidding, you do. New Snapchat stories. This came via text message. There's gonna be weather tomorrow. Wanted man in your area. Everything you ate this week has been recalled. Your name appeared in 41 searches last week. Amber alert! Just kidding. It was a test. You're spending against your budget. Stop spending money. New promo. From who? Uber Eats. You haven't practiced Spanish in 8 months. Want to? I just turned on because I don't know why. Hey, your screen time was up 14 hours last week. Text message. Who was it from? Snapchat.